Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are new here. My name is Abby. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4. I live in Florida and I share homeschooling content, lifestyle content, meals, mom life, anything mom you can think of. I share here on my channel, so if you like what you see, I would love to have you subscribe and stick around. So today I'm going to be sharing my theme for this upcoming school year, as well as doing a big recap of my theme from last year. This was one I got so many questions about, and I really have struggled to articulate this well, which is why this video is so delayed. But this one was just really difficult to explain, and yet it was so important that we focused on this last school year. So let's just get right into it. Here is how our last year's theme went and what my next year's theme is. You may be able to hear that it's raining outside. It just hopefully adds to the cozy vibes. It's very cozy in my house today and it smells like coffee and I love it. So every year I pick a theme in our homeschool year. Some years it is something very tangible and easy to understand, like read aloud. Like, okay, this year we're really gonna focus on doing read aloud well. Or this year we're really gonna focus on doing poetry tea time well. Or this year we're gonna make time in our schedule to play games during our school day or to do puzzles during our school day. And those years are much easier to explain because obviously I'm doing something every day or every week or just fitting something in the year. And when I choose this theme, I give that particular ideal priority over the rest of our subjects. One year I know we did morning basket as our theme, and my reasoning for doing this is that we have more than one school year, so we don't have to try to be all things all the time. I think the best way that I've found to more closely align with my homeschooling goals and ideals is to just pick one thing at a time and do that thing well, master that thing or learn that thing before you add anything else. And over time, with just patience and persistence, that will build into a lovely picture, you know, toward the end of your homeschooling journey. So over the last 5 or 6 years, I've tried to do one thing well, and it becomes habit and it becomes something that we then can build other things on, because I do have more than one school year, so I don't need to fatigue myself by trying to be so great at all these different components of, you know, what I think is a perfect homeschool. So choosing one thing, doing it well, doing it for the whole course of a school year, then the following year when we say 1 year we focus on games, then the following year when I add in, like, let's focus on doing read aloud well, we're already in the habit of playing games, then we can go ahead and add read aloud. And then the next year when we decide to focus on habit study or habit training, like a Charlotte Mason theme, you know, we're also playing games, we're also doing the read alouds. It's a part of our family culture now because we focused on it for one school year. So some years, like I said, those are really tangible things. Some years, like this last year, it's more of an abstract idea, which is why it's so hard to explain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna link a couple of articles that have helped me so much and a new video that Sonia Schaefer just came out with. I literally just saw it and I listened to it right before I sat down to film this video, which is just funny because this was already on my schedule. It couldn't have worked out more perfectly, and I'm really happy. She really articulates things so well, and so I'm gonna link some resources down below that will just help. But basically, my theme last year was atmosphere. Now, that is one of the 3 components of a Charlotte Mason education. Charlotte Mason said that an education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And so the idea of atmosphere is that a child's atmosphere, the parent's ideals, what a parent values, what's being promoted, even, you know, passively, not even just actively, whatever is being promoted in the home makes up 1/3 of a child's education. And so I was really kind of doing some soul searching and trying to see, why am I hitting a dead end in so many of these areas that I think are my ideals? Why are those not translating? Why are those not the things my kids are picking up on? Why are we struggling to pick up on these things? And so I did some soul searching and I realized that I really just needed to spend the year focusing on atmosphere, the atmosphere in our home, making sure that I am promoting these ideals and these values that I want to instill in my kids, and that it's easy for them to pick those things up because they're seeing it modeled for them. So that's like the kind of long way about it. But like I said, I'll link some resources down below. I also have some notes here because I didn't want to go off on a rabbit trail. This, like I said, it's kind of difficult for me to explain. I can't give like a perfect, this is how you can promote atmosphere in your home. So I'm just sharing my why, my how, and how it worked out for us. But if this is something you choose to focus on in your home, it would look totally different than mine. But hopefully just sharing our journey with it over the last year will be helpful. So something that Sonia Schaefer says quite often is that more is caught than taught. So, you know, I really had to do some soul searching, see why we were hitting these dead ends, and figure out what I was promoting, what was prevailing in our homeschool and in our home life that was causing us to just not reach kind of these ideals and these end goals that I have in mind. Of course, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I could just feel the conflict, like something is not translating well. So when I did the soul searching and I really started to think about like what is prevailing in our home, I was really seeing that it was becoming more of a just in time, we kind of like, you know, over the last 5-6 years, you know, it kind of became more of a to-do list mentality with homeschool, a get it done and move on mentality to homeschool, a school fits in the boundaries of these times kind of homeschool, some conflict over things, and just a checklist. And that was just naturally starting to become the habit and the mentality that was being displayed, that was being communicated, and that they were picking up on as well, because I tend to get really busy, and then that's just what I'm promoting is like, okay, we got school done, let's get school done so we can XYZ. And yet in my heart, I'm like, oh, lifelong learning, school is everything, you know. So I was not displaying and communicating the things that I believed deep down in my heart. Does that make sense? And so what was being translated, like I said, were the to-do lists and such, but what my ideals are is that school happens all the time outside of these boundaries of time, that I want to promote our home as a place of peace and spiritual guidance. I want to instill a love of learning, lifelong learning. I want my kids more than anything to be teachable and to want to continue to learn all throughout their life, because what I will say is in my adult life, I have learned and found passions and loved more things than I ever did during my school days, and it has just brought me so much joy. So I'm wanting to share these things with my kids, and that is what I would really like to promote in the atmosphere of our home. And so thus I began the homeschool year-long pursuit of just focusing on atmosphere. And I have broken this down into 3 specific ways that I can identify in hindsight that I really kind of focused on. But going into it, I was like, I don't know, atmosphere. I'm just gonna focus on atmosphere. I didn't know if that meant like more physical, if that meant more emotional. I wasn't sure what atmosphere meant, but I just knew that I wanted to reclaim our atmosphere. So the first thing I did was I started with me, and I realized that my kids model my behavior more than they model anything that I say or that John says or that, you know, anybody tells them to do. So my kids are pretty obedient, if I'm being totally honest, and they will follow the checklist. They will dutifully do the things that I tell them to do, but they aren't doing those things organically on their own. It's not something that's just happening. It's happening because I say so, and I don't want to have that relationship forever. And I also know that that relationship isn't good for them as adults. It isn't good for them as people in general. That get up and go isn't coming from within, it's coming from mom. And so I recognized that I personally wasn't placing value on these things in my life, so therefore I was not displaying these things for my kids. So the first thing I did when I wanted to promote lifelong learning, the habit of Bible study, just you know, excitement over handcrafts and a desire to go deeper in my own education, or in my kids' education, was I did that for myself. And I cultivated a mom basket so that my kids would see me doing that in my downtime. And I had to be really intentional with screens, and I had to be really intentional that I was not allowing myself to just get so distracted and to be so to-do list minded. And not only, and I share my mom basket on here all the time, my Scholé basket. I will link my last video up here if you want to check it out. Not only am I pursuing those things more often now because they're in a particular basket in a place in my home and easily accessible by me, but my kids have picked up on those habits now during their quiet time, because they know that I'm reading those books or doing those things in my downtime. I'm finding them picking those things up for themselves far more often. And so that's the very first thing I did, is I really focused on myself. What was I spending these little fragments of time that I could find doing? Was I spending that time scrolling Instagram? Was I spending that time, you know, getting caught up in a task that was not important or necessary at the time? Or am I using those little bits of time to do something that's wholesome, valuable, you know, true, beautiful, good? So that was the first thing I did, is I just kind of started with myself, because, you know, first and foremost, you are modeling things to your kids that they will pick up on for the rest of their lives. And so I really wanted to focus in on what it was that I was placing value on. And I recognized right away that that was like #1 issue. I was not placing value on that in my own life, and therefore I was not going to be able to teach my kids that that was important and valuable. So then the second thing, and this was something that I could kind of say, I could abstractly identify, but I couldn't necessarily articulate, was just seeking opportunities for connection. So we do travel quite a bit. We especially go between Florida and North Carolina quite a bit, and there's a lot in between, a lot of really cool opportunities. And so immediately I knew that I wanted to use, as often as we were making that trip, to try to make some connections, because that is a part of my kids' normal life. They are not just living, you know, here 24/7 in Florida, where they're back and forth. And so I wanted them to get in the habit of looking for opportunities and connections and being excited about not just reaching our destination, but finding some cool things along the way, getting out into nature, doing some new discovering, and just excitement to explore. And so I really wanted to just make sure that we put space in our schedule this year to make connections, because like I said, our atmosphere personally in our family goes outside of these four walls. We're busy. We're a busy family. We travel quite a bit. And so I wanted to include that when I included the idea of atmosphere. Or I wanted to include that when I considered the idea of atmosphere. That didn't make sense. So I just wanted to seek some space for connection. So we really discovered some really neat things this year. We spent some time in Charleston. We had just recently studied the Civil War. While we were in Charleston, we found out about the slave dwelling project. So then a couple of months later, when we went up to ski, we stopped in Savannah and we did another tour that was recommended by the slave dwelling project at Owens Thomas House. We went to a few different gardens and farms this year. It always kind of ended up to make a connection with something we were studying in 5 in a row, or just something seasonal. We did a lot more nature study this year. One of my kids just really picked up on a certain person in history, and so we've made attempts to get over to see their residence in Florida, and just some really cool connections that I wouldn't have otherwise been seeking. And the whole idea of this for me personally was just making space for it and looking for it. It wasn't necessarily like, we're going to travel this many times or we're going to seek out this many opportunities. But for me, it was just the idea of atmosphere, education being an atmosphere, that allowed me to make space for it in our schedule. I'm always hearing about these neat things, but I'm always shielding myself from it because I just never feel like I can handle one more thing. But when I had shifted my focus into recognizing that you know, I want my kids to learn to discover. I want to teach my kids how to get out of this like mindset that I feel like this generation is getting into, which is just like looking at a screen all the time, and I want them to seek opportunities. So that softened my heart to make space for that in our schedule and make some other things no's so that those could be yeses. So the first thing was just, you know, placing value on my own, things I was cultivating for myself. And then the second thing was seeking opportunities to learn. And what that really did for our family is that it really just promoted more of a desire to read more books, more of a desire to make connection, and to almost kind of go off on some unit study type of pursuits, just because we would make a quick connection at a museum that we had passed by, or on a nature preserve that we happened to have the opportunity to visit, and that would turn into us then studying something or being interested in something that was kind of outside of our typical day-to-day studies. So that was a really good component that was added into my whole pursuit of atmosphere this year. And then the very last thing was the physical things that I did in my actual house. So of course I like have been on this pursuit to declutter for a while, but I also advertised and promoted their musical instruments and talents. So what I mean by that's something that I say with Usborne, is advertise reading. Like, you know, I put books on display. I don't just put out the spines, but I put them in a lot of different places. We have books in almost every room of our house, good living books in almost every room, bedrooms, bathroom, our living room, our school room, in my car, unintentionally, but in my car, in my room. I mean, there are books all over this house. And that is just something that's important to me, as well as puzzles, which sounds kind of funny. Like, I know puzzles aren't like necessarily a thrilling idea to many people, but to me, puzzles represent just like slowing down and taking time to work on something. So there's puzzles in every room in our house. Their instruments. I don't keep their violins in their violin cases. I keep their violins on a stand. So when we get home from lessons, we put them out on a stand so they can easily access those things. We like to, my kids like to garden. So I've got their gardening gloves right outside on the front porch so that when they're outdoors, it's something they can quickly grab. So really just physically advertising and promoting things that they could be doing, or interests that they already have, so that it makes it that much easier, one less step to have to access those things, and therefore more likely that they're going to pick those things up or pursue those things outside of our school hours. I also, I tried to promote just a peaceful atmosphere, like playing hymns. I have a CD player. I put on hymns or just soft worship music during the day, physically putting my phone away during the day as often as I'm not like filming or, doing something on Instagram. Essential oils, like all sorts of like physical things to just get the senses going, or to promote an idea of peace and comfort within the walls of our home, because I want my kids to have just like a warm feeling when they consider our home, and just like a certain level of comfort. And so by doing a few of those physical things like hymns and scents and music and things like that, I just feel like that lends itself to promoting that atmosphere that I really desire to promote in our home. So I hope that didn't sound too like abstract. I really am trying to like nail down specifics, but that's the best I can do. I can tell you though that we have a long way to go. My theme for next year is really just building off of this in a sense, but also this year, on top of choosing to focus on atmosphere this year, so many things happened this last school year that if I was not focused on seeking opportunities outside of our home, on our home being a place of peace, on modeling certain behaviors for my kids, I think the wheels would have totally fallen off of our homeschool. We had so many stop and go moments just from outside circumstances that we had no control over, becoming caretakers for family members, just personal, picking up my husband took over the family business this year, and that was in the middle of our school, or beginning of our school year, and it was just wild. And then there were injuries within our family that we kind of stopped school to tend to, and you know, just so many things this year that that just having the mindset of those few things, our physical home, seeking opportunities, and the behaviors that I'm modeling for my kids, those things became so important. And so in so many ways, I've said it a few times, this was our worst school year, but then again, in so many ways, this was our best school year, because we quickly realized that it wasn't about the books and the schedule that kept us connected, kept us learning, and gave us a really great year, not on paper, but a really great year as a family, and a really great year pushing the boundaries of homeschool and just finding out, you know, what else there is outside of the four walls of our home. So, so that was last year's theme. Moving into my one thing for next year, next homeschool year, this upcoming school year that's about to start, what I'm focusing on is, well, I have to take you on a journey to go there too, okay? I hope you guys grabbed coffee. This is way more disconnected than I intended for it to be, and a little bit longer than I did, but I knew it wasn't gonna be something I could easily explain. Okay, so I just talked about atmosphere. I just talked about trying to like reclaim that atmosphere. I'm still trying to identify what ideals really rule my life. I'm still trying to figure out like what is our family culture, and how do those things fit into our homeschool? Because there are a few things that really matter to me. Our faith is number one, as far as like John and I both together. That is like the number one thing that just across the board, like school, family life, home life, that is something that, you know, has the most weight in our lives. You know, there's things like loving history. I love history. I love sharing history with my kids. Like a bunch of different things that I value, we value as a family. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly how those things affect our day-to-day schedule, how those things affect our curriculum choices, what exactly is our family culture. And so I was trying to consider what I wanted to focus on for next school year. And there's a couple things I feel like are falling apart a little bit. Our read aloud time is not going so well. Our Bible study time is not something that I've really put as priority, and so that's something I'm wanting to do this upcoming school year to really give some effort. Life skills is something I have not put much emphasis on, and I'm seeing the necessity of it now. So I'm like, okay, do I call it a read aloud year again, or do I want to focus on life skills this year? And then I heard this quote by Charlotte Mason that says, do not let the endless succession of small things crowd great ideals out of sight and mind. And so what I was thinking before I heard that was simplify. I think this year I just need to focus on simplifying. But the reality is, with 4 children, owning a business, and being just a generally busier family, simplify isn't necessarily the right word to use for the next school year, because I think just my nature is to like throw it all away, lock my door, close us in, and start fresh. And that's not realistic any longer. That is no longer realistic for the age that my kids are. That's no longer realistic for some things that we place value on and have committed to. There's always some things that can be let go, but I'm also getting to the point with my kids' ages and interests, and my own interests and desires that I want my kids to pursue, that's not a healthy mindset necessarily for our family right now, is to just shut down on everything. And so I heard that quote and I realized that it's not necessarily that I need to stop everything. It's that we need to slow down. And so the word unhurried really came to mind, and it just fits so well. And you know, there's an article, like I said, I'm gonna link down below, where Sonia Schaefer talks about the margins. If a book was filled from top to bottom with words and there were no margins, it wouldn't function well. There are margins. There has to be space in your homeschool and in your children's lives and in your own personal life for notes. There has to be space for a little bit of freedom of expression and pursuing interests, and there has to be those margins. And so when I thought about that, I realized that there are things in the evenings, there are things on the weekends that we're pursuing as a family. So those margins in our family happen to be a blessing. They happen to be the blessing of homeschool, is that I can cultivate those margins within our school day time. And so one of the things that I'm really wanting to do, like I said, unhurried, I'm wanting to promote the idea of being unhurried, being diligent to do our work still placing value on certain things, but not being in this constant state of chaos that I feel like we are in, because I'm placing the same amount of value on everything. I have these different ideas about waking up and getting going and using time well and filling all the gaps. And so I'm trying to just really promote the idea of being unhurried, of not being anxious, and of not overwhelming ourselves from morning till evening. So for us, that space this upcoming year, I think, is going to be in the mornings. I think that, within those margins, I want to promote a couple of different things in our home. I want to make sure that there's space for personal Bible study and quiet time. I want to make sure that there's room for life skills. I know I've talked to you guys already about the fact that I would like to teach my kids how to make breakfast, and I don't want to put a time limit on that. I would like for that to be a joyous thing that we do together in the mornings. Teaching a life skill, yes, it's a subject. Yes, I see it to some degree as a box to check, but I also see it as a connection to be made, and a reason to pause studies. So what did I say? I actually have it written down here. And stewardship and read alouds. So stewardship is something I've really spoken to my kids about quite a bit lately. Just about everything that we have not being our own, and really taking care of our home so that we can open up our home to others. And so if I have them constantly on task and constantly running, they're not really getting to sit in that mindset of like creating a space for others, of being welcoming hosts and hostesses, of learning how to give of your time and your resources to others. And then read aloud time, which, fits in our schedule in different points in the day. But I also think just slowing down our mornings and not starting morning basket right at 8 a.m. is going to give us a little bit more freedom to read aloud while we're eating breakfast or things like that. So that is just what I'm hoping to promote this upcoming school year, is the word and the idea unhurried. So I was reading, and I thought I might bring it over for the video, but apparently I forgot. I have the book Making Your Home a Haven. It's a Bible study book, and the very first day that I was doing that Bible study is the day that I was really considering, like, do I have a specific theme for this upcoming year? Like, Lord, what is it that, I should turn my heart toward in our home? And so I'm reading Philippians 4 through 8, 4 through 9, I can't remember. It's, the whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure. But Philippians 4:5 said, let your gentleness be evident to all, for the Lord is near. And that really convicted me. That really convicted my heart. For me, there is a huge difference and a very fine line between a life ruled by crisis, as Sonia Schaefer would say, and a life ruled by ideals. And I tend to err toward a life ruled by crisis that tends to, end up being a lot of frustration, or a lot of being hurried, or a lot of tension. And when I make space for things, those are symptoms of a deeper problem. The deeper problem most often is being overwhelmed, having too much going on, not knowing what should take priority. When I can release those things and trust those things to the Lord, trust the Lord for my daily bread, that is when those feelings of frustration and the hurried mentality tend to go away, and that is where there is a state of peace, rest in the Lord, and therefore gentleness flowing freely from me to my kids, to others. And so it was just funny that I was reading that verse that same day, and I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here, God. Gentleness, unhurried, still, like I said, still being diligent to get things done, still recognizing that there is a to-do list, but taking on a different mentality, clothing myself first and foremost in rest in the Lord, peace in our home, and then you know, from there making decisions, and from that position choosing what is and isn't important. And so this year I am going to continue in my deeper understanding and pursuit of the Charlotte Mason idea of education being an atmosphere, but taking it one step further and figuring out what ideas are ruling my life, what we can do to cultivate and to create those margins within our home and our homeschool and our home life, and just really promoting the idea of being unhurried and the Lord giving us our daily bread. So that is what my theme was last year. That is what my theme is this upcoming year. If you do a specific theme like poetry tea time, or this year we're gonna just make sure we finish math on time, or we're gonna really give weight to morning basket, or even if it is like a kind of a more abstract idea like this, let me know down below what those themes are for you, what they have been in the past, even what's worked well for you, and just kind of where you're at heading into this upcoming school year. Thank you guys for listening to me ramble. I don't know, this felt more like a heart-to-heart kind of conversation than a perfectly scripted one, so I hope I didn't confuse you. I hope it was helpful for those of you who had asked me for advice about education being an atmosphere and pursuing atmosphere in your homeschool. And I will see you guys soon. Bye guys.